We clearly need more oversight over what the president is doing in Afghanistan.
Seth Moulton speaks slowly because he thinks slowly. But he's clear on one thing. We need more oversight over Afghanistan. And the Congress soon got it. Just days after the New York Times story, both Democrats and Republicans on the House Armed Services Committee voted overwhelmingly to amend the annual defense budget. They did this to prevent the president, any president, from pulling troops out of Afghanistan. That's the one thing presidents aren't allowed to do. That amendment was sponsored by Jason Crow, he's a Democrat, and by Liz Cheney, who's a Republican. And it passed the committee by a vote of 45 to 11. It became law later in the year after the Senate overrode Donald Trump's veto. Seems to recall that's the only veto they overrode. So rarely has a news story had a swifter or more profound effect than this one did. And by now, of course, you have guessed the punchline. It was fake. The New York Times story was a lie. It was placed in the paper by neocons in order to subvert our democratic system, and it did, and once again imposed their will on the country. The public didn't want to stay in Afghanistan for 20 years. They did, and they got their way because they lied. The so-called intel community is now admitting this. They're admitting that the story wasn't true, and they're doing it for a very specific reason. Joe Biden has decided he now wants out of Afghanistan, but before we can withdraw the troops, we need new facts. You have to fix this story or you can't pull the troops out, and the CIA is happy to oblige. So none of it was real. They can say that now. But what we can't do is stop attacking Russia. So maybe Russia didn't actually put bounties on our troops, but Russia is still very bad. Russia, not China, is our chief enemy. And Adam Schiff helpfully reminded us of that yesterday.
The intelligence community says that they only have low to moderate confidence that it's an accurate story. So it looks as though in this case, Trump might have had the right response, don't you think?
Well, I don't think Trump had the right response in that he didn't confront the Russians on this. He didn't even appear to take the issue very seriously. It's my sense that the intelligence community believes that the Russians did engage in this conduct, but they don't have the requisite level of confidence in that conclusion to go forward with sanctions on that basis.
So Donald Trump didn't take the hoax seriously enough, and that's a sign of bad character. We don't know the Russians did anything wrong, but we must confront Russia over what we don't know they did anyway. So attack Russia every why we're doing it, they'll know. That's our new position. The Biden administration just yesterday declared a national emergency for no obvious reason. Joe Biden announced that Russia has somehow taken malign actions against U.S. interests. Watch.
Today, I've approved several steps, including the expulsion of several Russian officials as a consequence of their actions. I've also signed an executive order authorizing new measures, including sanctions to address specific harmful actions that Russia has taken against U.S. interests. I was clear with President Putin that we could have gone further, but I chose not to do so. I chose to be proportionate. If Russia continues to interfere with our democracy, I'm prepared to take further actions to respond.
Save that tape for the future when you want a reminder of just how insane things got in the year 2021. That wasn't posturing. That wasn't their bad. Those are actions against a sovereign nation, a foreign power, expelling their diplomats, destroying their economy, threatening to back their enemies in a war, a real war too, not a war of words, a war where people get killed. We're doing all those things. The question is, why are we doing them? That's the part that nobody ever explains. But they don't really need to, because Vladimir Putin is so unbelievably, historically, monstrously evil, you don't need a justification to go to war against him. A man that bad should be punished just for existing with nuclear weapons if necessary. Here's Joe Biden explaining that Vladimir Putin has no soul.
You said you know he doesn't have a soul.
I did say that to him, yes. And his response was, we understand one another. I wasn't being a wise guy. I was alone with him in his office. That's how it came about. It was when President Bush had said, I've looked in his eyes and saw a soul. I said, looked in your eyes, and I don't think you have a soul. And looked back at me and said, we understand each other.
So you know Vladimir Putin. You think he's a killer?
Mm-hmm. I do.
And that's taking Corn Pop to a new level. You don't have a soul? You're a demon, a human gargoyle. This is a head of state who has like over 1,000 nuclear weapons aimed at us. Why is our president talking about Russia this way? Well, it's obvious. Clearly moving toward some kind of larger confrontation with Russia. Why are we doing that, and what will it look like? Doug Macgregor has thought a lot about this. He's a retired Army colonel, a former senior advisor to the Secretary of Defense. We're happy to have him on tonight. Doug, thanks so much for coming on. First, why, and then what next? Why the posturing, and not just posturing, but acts of aggression, because that's what they are, against Russia?